On another absolutely miserable and grey day here in South London, but not that cold, oddly enough, I've come to my local bookstore, which is Crofton Books. Normally they have stuff outside, but they don't today because it's so miserable, horrible and raining. But let's go and have a look inside and see what we can see inside. They've got a lot of books, obviously. They have some new ones, but it's almost all old ones. And then they have a little science fiction section just upstairs here, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But the main, well, they've got some lovely penguins here. I love these old penguins. And sometimes you get a little science fiction treasure in here. But the bulk of the science fiction is down the stairs, down here, at the very back of the store. So let's go down. Oops, sorry. Actually, they've cleaned it up a little bit. Normally it's a little bit more. Wow, they've cleaned it up and put all the books here. It's literally a mountain of books. And yeah, this here, this bookshelf, that one, from top to bottom pretty much, and there's graphic novels and comics at the bottom there. And then this one here is all science fiction. This is more fantasy over here, but this is mostly rock solid science fiction. I think what I'll do is I'll have a look through here, and then we can have a little shifty about the kind of things that I've spotted that are fun. I must admit, I have never read any of E.E. Doc Smith's books at all, although I've owned a bunch of the Lensman series books. What I've always loved about them, while I owned them, was the terrific Chris Foss covers. And there's a whole selection here from the Skylark series and the Lensman series. These ones are just brilliant. On my website, I've got a little bit about Chris Foss and some of his classic charismatic images, but they really are the bee's knees. And for me, they kind of define the era of science fiction that I grew up in. I never heard of any of these books. They've got pretty good covers, a little bit kind of cheap and cheesy. If anybody knows anything about them, I'd be curious to know. On the subject of covers, this is one of my all-time favourite covers. I was exposed to it during my early adolescence, so you can probably imagine why it's one of my favourite covers. I've got examples of his art and also this other edition of Glory Road. The artist who did the cover for that on my website. So if you wanted to check that out and have a look at those artists, please feel free to do so. This one obviously is straight out of the book, and that one kind of is a more general atmospheric view of the environment. The features of the characters is portrayed there as well as it is here. I have read it since, and it creaks now when I read it as an adult. Here are 3 books that I've read. I guess everybody probably knows this one. This is absolutely brilliant. I think it's the best description of a kind of catastrophe novel ever written, and everybody should read the 4 volumes, well, technically 5 if you include The Earth of the New Sun of this series, because Gene Wolfe is a genius. Here is a curious edition of the Midwich Cuckoos that I've never seen before, published by Longman. It looks like it's for kids. They want, the bookstore wants £25 for it. In this state, I don't think it's worth it because the back's coming apart. But it has quite a few curious features. I think it's an edited version for kids. And then they discuss cuckoos, so I'm presuming that's to introduce kids to that kind of biology so they get the point of the story. And then they have little thumbnails of all of the characters in the book. And then they even have something which I do really want actually. I think I'm going to take a picture of it. They have a map of Midwich itself, which is really cool. The award for the worst cover goes to Better Than Life in the Red Dwarf series, written by Gart Naylor. That is truly appalling, but perhaps it fits with the content, comedy, humour of the series itself. I don't know. The Masterworks series is a bit hit and miss when it comes to covers, but this one is really great. Some more great covers. I don't know anything about either book. I've never actually read a single book by Piers Anthony. Here is a book that I bought as an adolescent. You might be able to guess why. And I owned it for a long time, and then I have never read it. And here is the very edition that I owned. This is a not particularly great edition, Masterworks edition of Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. I have read about 3/4 of the way through this and just lost interest. I really enjoyed this book. I actually listened to it as an audio book, but it was really good, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone. This is another great book if you haven't read it. I'm sure most of you who would watch this channel would have read it. This is why is it so thick? I don't know. My edition wasn't as thick as this, but anyway, I reviewed an edition of this for Science magazine, and I was not particularly flattering of it. I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't rate it up there with his more famous Neuromancer series. And here they are. I think these are pretty handsome editions of the first two in the series. I really like them, actually. I think someone I rue the passing of, Chris Breese, died last year, I think it was. I think this was his first published novel. This is an edited version of the novella that appeared in, I think it was Analog. I've got a copy of it anyway. We can have a look at it when we get back to the States. In terms of ideas, it's brilliant. In terms of actual story, it suffers some of Chris's quirks, but it's certainly worth a read, that's for sure. And the cover portrays an image from the book, giving you an idea of the peculiarity of the world which he describes.